It began on a drizzly Tuesday morning, the kind of day when the glass walls of Kingston Tower wore a veil of mist. In the grand penthouse at the top, Vincent Harrow, the silver-haired shipping magnate whose fortune was the stuff of business legend, lay sprawled across a velvet couch. The air reeked faintly of fresh polish and expensive cologne, yet there was something else, something faint and almost imperceptible, that Maria noticed. Maria was the invisible soul of Kingston Tower. She arrived before dawn, leaving without a trace by the time the first espresso machines hummed awake in the offices. Barely anyone knew her name. Fewer still noticed her almond-brown eyes that quietly studied everything. She wasn't a doctor, nor a nurse. But she had seen sickness before, too much of it, while caring for her younger brother back in Manila. She knew the subtle language of the body. The tremor of a hand, the flicker of the eyes, the shallow rise and fall of the chest. That morning, Vincent Harrow's breathing wasn't just shallow. It was uneven, pausing mid-inhale as though something inside him refused to let the air through. His skin bore an odd, waxy sheen, and when he reached for his glass of water, his fingers curled stiffly, missing the rim. Maria's heart thudded in her chest. She had seen this once before, on the day her neighbor collapsed from a silent stroke. "Sir, are you feeling well?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vincent's eyes flicked to her, faintly amused, faintly irritated. "Just tired, Maria. I've been signing papers all night. That's all." She hesitated. She had been taught not to intrude, especially not with someone like him. But the clock in her mind was already ticking. "Please," she said, more firmly this time, "let me call someone." "I said I'm fine," Vincent replied, forcing a chuckle, though it came out strained. He tried to sit straighter, and that was when Maria saw it, his left shoulder sagging, his words slurring just slightly at the edges, like wet ink bleeding on paper. She didn't ask permission again. Maria snatched the phone from the counter, dialing the emergency number with trembling fingers. "Possible stroke," she told the operator, her voice crisp now, precise. The operator assured her help was coming, but Maria's eyes stayed on Vincent, urging him to stay awake, her tone becoming an anchor he could hold on to. The paramedics arrived in minutes that felt like hours. They confirmed her suspicion, a major ischemic stroke, caught just in time for treatment. One of them, a tall man with sandy hair, glanced at her in surprise. "If you'd waited even another 30 minutes, he didn't finish. 2 weeks later, Maria was sweeping the marble floor of the penthouse lobby when she heard the rhythmic tap of a cane behind her. Turning, she found Vincent Harrow himself, paler but upright, a faint smile softening his usual steel expression. "You saved my life," he said simply. She lowered her eyes. "I just called for help, sir." "No," he said, his voice carrying the quiet weight of someone unaccustomed to gratitude. "You saw what no one else did. My assistant thought I was hungover. My doctor's secretary told me to schedule a checkup next week. You didn't look away." Maria felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had never been praised in this building, never been noticed for anything beyond a clean floor or a polished banister. "Tell me," Vincent continued, "why is someone with eyes like yours working here?" Her silence was her answer. The truth was tangled, migration papers, debts, a promise to her family. Vincent studied her for a moment, then tapped his cane once on the marble, as though sealing an unspoken decision. "I think it's time someone invested in you, Maria." What happened after that was not instant transformation, but a slow, unfolding current. One that began with an unexpected offer that would pull Maria into a world she had only ever cleaned from the outside. And yet, as the days passed, Maria began to sense that saving Vincent's life had set into motion something far more dangerous than gratitude. The first sign came in the form of a sealed envelope slipped under her small apartment door. No return address, only 5 words neatly typed on a single sheet of paper. "You should have let him die." Maria stared at the words, her breath caught somewhere between her ribs and her throat. The paper trembled in her hands, but it wasn't from the faint chill seeping in through the cracked window. The message was typed, deliberate, with no smudges, no fingerprints, no hint of the sender's identity. Her first instinct was to crumple it and toss it into the bin, but the weight of those words kept her still. Who would want Vincent Harrow dead? She had never moved in his circles, but she knew his kind, men whose fortunes drew not only admiration but enemies. Still, this felt personal. She slid the note into the inside pocket of her worn cardigan, hiding it even from herself. Her shift started in 20 minutes, and she couldn't afford to be late. By the time she arrived at Kingston Tower, the marble lobby gleamed under the morning lights, and the air carried the faint scent of orchids from the giant arrangements Vincent insisted on every week. Everything looked the same, but she felt different. Her mop swayed rhythmically across the floor, yet her eyes flicked toward every unfamiliar figure who stepped through the revolving doors. She caught herself glancing up at the security cameras, wondering if someone, somewhere, was watching her too. At noon, as she passed through the penthouse floor delivering fresh linen, she heard voices in Vincent's office, low, tense, with an edge that made her pause. "The board won't like it," a man's voice said, clipped and impatient. "They don't have to like it," Vincent replied. His tone was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "You're putting yourself at risk." "I've already been at risk," Vincent said, and for a heartbeat Maria wondered if he meant the stroke, or something else entirely. She forced herself to keep moving, depositing the linen and heading for the service elevator. But as the doors closed, she caught sight of a man she had never seen before, tall, sharp suit, eyes cold and assessing, stepping out of Vincent's office. He walked past her without a glance, yet Maria felt as though his gaze had brushed over her like a blade. That night, she couldn't sleep. The note replayed in her mind, over and over, until the words no longer felt like a warning but a threat. At 2 a.m, she rose from bed, switched on the single dim lamp, and spread a sheet of paper in front of her. She tried to list every detail about that day. The moment she found Vincent, the paramedics, the people in the penthouse. Who had been there? Who had spoken to him? Who might see his survival as a problem? Her pen paused. She remembered something odd. The assistant who was always glued to her phone, telling Vincent he could rest later, instead of calling for help right away. Maria had brushed it off at the time, thinking it was indifference, but what if it was more? The next morning, she decided to test her suspicion. While emptying bins on the executive floor, she lingered near the assistant's desk. The woman, sleek and efficient with a perfect bob, was on a call. "Yes, I told you, the doctors didn't catch it in time." "No, I don't know how she..." The assistant's gaze flicked up, landing on Maria, and the rest of the sentence dissolved into a tight-lipped smile. "I'll call you back." Maria kept moving, pretending she'd heard nothing, but her pulse quickened. Whoever the assistant was talking to, they hadn't been pleased about Vincent's recovery. By Friday, Vincent summoned her to his office. She entered cautiously, unsure why he wanted to see her. "I'm flying to Geneva next week," he said, leaning on his cane. "It's a conference. High stakes, tedious, and full of people who think they can manipulate me. I want you to come." She blinked. "Me? Sir, I'm just..." "Not just anything," Vincent cut in. "I need someone I can trust. And someone who notices details others don't." Her mind spun. Geneva was a world away from the small, dim apartment she returned to each night. She wanted to refuse, to keep her life simple, but the note in her pocket felt heavier than ever. Maybe being close to Vincent was the only way to understand who wanted him dead. "I'll go," she said quietly. In the days that followed, preparations were made. A passport was expedited, flights booked, and for the first time, Maria found herself in a boutique being fitted for clothes she could never afford. The assistant was present during most of these arrangements, her polite smile never reaching her eyes. The night before their departure, Maria returned home to find her front door ajar. Her chest tightened. She stepped inside cautiously. Nothing seemed out of place until she noticed the envelope on her kitchen table. No return address. No markings. Just a single sheet inside. This time, there were only 3 words. "You've been warned." The sound of footsteps in the hallway made her whirl around, but by the time she reached the door, it was empty. Her neighbors' doors remained shut. She barely slept, yet by morning she was at the airport beside Vincent, his security detail shadowing them. The flight was long, the cabin quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Vincent worked through most of it, occasionally glancing at her as if weighing unspoken thoughts. When they arrived in Geneva, the air was crisp, the city bathed in golden evening light. The hotel was a fortress of glass and steel, discreetly guarded. Still, Maria felt the same prickling between her shoulder blades, the sense of eyes on her. On the second day, during a gala dinner, Vincent introduced her as "my trusted aide" to a stream of businessmen and politicians whose smiles were as polished as their cufflinks. Maria kept her own smile faint, her eyes scanning the room. Somewhere among these people could be the one who had sent those notes. Near the end of the evening, as waiters carried trays of champagne, Maria stepped out onto the balcony for air. That's when she heard it, a low voice behind her, speaking in English with a faint European accent. You should have stayed in Manila. She turned sharply, but the balcony was empty except for her. Her heart pounded. Then, from the corner of her eye, she caught movement, a shadow slipping through the open doors back into the crowd. She followed, weaving through the guests, but the figure vanished into the glittering sea of suits and gowns. By the time she returned to Vincent's side, her palms were damp and her mind was racing. That night, in the quiet of her hotel room, she checked her bag. The zipper had been moved. Inside, beneath her clothes, she found a folded slip of paper. It contained no words this time, only a photograph, grainy but clear enough to see Vincent standing beside a black car. And in the background, almost hidden, was Maria herself watching him. A red circle had been drawn around her face. Maria's hands trembled as she stared at the red circle. It wasn't the first time she had been threatened, but this was different. This wasn't a warning anymore, it was a promise. The photograph meant someone had been close enough to watch her in silence, close enough to mark her like prey. Her first instinct was to run straight to Vincent, to show him everything, but something in her gut told her not to. If the person behind this was close to him, and Maria was starting to suspect they were, she couldn't risk tipping them off. She tucked the photo back into her bag and sat on the edge of the bed, her mind working through possibilities. The next morning, Vincent seemed in good spirits, unaware of her unease. Meetings filled the day, and by evening there was another event, a private dinner with a handful of investors at an opulent lakeside villa. The setting was exquisite. Chandeliers casting soft light over polished oak, the air filled with the quiet strains of a string quartet. Yet Maria couldn't shake the gnawing tension in her chest. Halfway through the evening, she noticed the assistant again. Always near Vincent, but never too near. She flitted between conversations like a shadow in silk. And once, just once, Maria caught her glancing at her with something sharp and cold in her eyes, before masking it behind a practiced smile. When dessert was served, Maria excused herself to the balcony overlooking the dark water. The lake was still, the air crisp, and the only sound was the faint ripple of waves against the stone wall below. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, until she heard footsteps behind her. Enjoying the view. The voice was calm, measured. Maria turned. The tall man from Vincent's office in London was standing there, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "It's beautiful," she said carefully. "It can be deceptive," he replied. Calm on the surface, deadly underneath. Something in his gaze tightened, and Maria felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean," he said softly, stepping closer, "that some people's survival creates more problems than their death ever would. Problems that need resolving." Her pulse thundered in her ears. "Are you threatening me?" He smiled faintly. "Just a friendly observation." And then, just as quickly, he stepped back, offering a polite nod before disappearing into the villa. Maria didn't follow. She knew now, without doubt, that Vincent's stroke hadn't been fate. Someone had wanted him gone, and they had been ready to let him die. Her saving him had interfered with something much bigger, something dangerous enough that they were willing to scare her into silence, or worse. She returned to the table, her mind set. She couldn't wait for the truth to surface, it wouldn't. She had to drag it into the light. That night, after Vincent retired to his suite, Maria moved quietly through the hotel, heading for the assistant's room. She had seen which door it was earlier. Listening for footsteps, she slipped a thin piece of wire from her hair bun and worked the lock. It clicked open with a soft sigh. Inside, the room smelled faintly of perfume and paper. She searched quickly, knowing she had little time. The first 2 drawers yielded nothing but clothes, but the third, buried beneath a stack of documents, held a small black phone. Not the assistant's official work phone, but something unmarked. Maria powered it on, her heart racing. The lock screen lit up with a single notification. A message. "Tomorrow night. Lakeside Pier. No witnesses." Her breath caught. Tomorrow night was Vincent's final dinner in Geneva before returning to London. The pier was only a short walk from the villa where the dinner would be held. This wasn't a meeting, it was a setup. She took a quick photo of the message with her own phone, then powered the black phone off and returned it exactly as she'd found it. By morning, she had a plan. She didn't tell Vincent, not directly. If she was right, anyone could be listening, watching. Instead, she approached his head of security, a stone-faced man named Clark. She showed him the photograph of the message. His jaw tightened. "You're certain this was in her room?" he asked. "Yes," Maria replied. "If you don't believe me, do nothing." But if I'm right, and you do nothing, you'll be cleaning up his body tomorrow night. Clark didn't answer, but his eyes told her he believed her. That evening, the villa glowed under soft lantern light. Guests mingled, laughter echoing across the gardens. Vincent was in his element, smiling and charming, unaware that shadows were moving closer. When the moment came, the assistant slipped away from the group. Maria followed at a distance, careful, her shoes silent on the stone path. She saw the assistant's slim figure moving toward the pier, phone in hand. Ahead, a tall silhouette, her accomplice, waited in the gloom. Maria didn't hesitate. She stepped into the light, her voice steady. "It's over." The assistant spun, startled, but the man stepped forward with a sneer. "You don't belong in this, cleaner." Maria held her ground. "Funny. Neither does murder." From the darkness behind her, Clark and two other security men emerged, their presence sudden and overwhelming. The man froze, his hands half raised. The assistant's mask shattered, her face twisted with fury. Vincent arrived moments later, confusion and shock flooding his expression as the scene unfolded. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. Maria turned to him. "They planned your stroke. And when you survived, they planned to finish what they started." She nodded toward the assistant. "Your trusted aide was selling you to your enemies. He," she gestured at the man, "was the one ready to make it permanent." Vincent's gaze hardened as the truth sank in. The assistant's protests were cut off by Clark's cold, efficient orders, and within minutes both were escorted away, their fate sealed. Later, as the guests continued unaware, Vincent found Maria by the edge of the gardens. The night air was cool, the stars reflecting on the still lake. "You saved my life," he said quietly. Again, Maria shook her head. "I just didn't look away." He studied her for a long moment, then smiled, small but genuine. "You could work anywhere in the world, Maria. For anyone. I hope you'll choose to stay." For the first time, she allowed herself to smile back. Not because of the offer, but because she had faced something dark and hadn't let it swallow her. The moon hung high over the lake, casting silver light across the water. Somewhere, the music from the villa floated through the night. But here, in the quiet, Maria felt the weight of the last days lift from her shoulders. She had stepped into a world she never belonged to, and changed it. And though she didn't know where this path would take her, she knew one thing with certainty. She would never again be invisible.